Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Wong, your professor for services management. Today, I'm going to talk about thinking about services, which forms segment 2 of your online content. We all know that there is strong competition in many service industries, especially in the recent years. Such industries include banking, airline, hotel, travel, entertainment, retail, F&B, and the list goes on. As a result of competition in the marketplace, firms need to focus on the delivery of service quality so as to create strong competitive advantage for themselves and to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. Before I talk a little bit more about the services concepts and classifications, let us briefly go through the development of services thinking. Services was first coined in the 1960s, where researchers started defining services by looking at service definition, how it is different from goods, and the relevance of services. In the 1970s, services marketers started coining services marketing concepts. They look at the expanded 7 Ps of services marketing. They established frameworks for services marketing as well as service-related marketing concepts. In the 1980s, marketers, academicians, and practitioners alike started measuring service quality. This was driven by the work of Parasurama, Zetemer, and Barry, where they formed the 10 dimensions of service quality, which later was refined into the 5 dimensions of service quality, namely reliability, responsiveness, assurance, tangibles, and empathy. In the 1970s, the move towards service production gave rise to concepts such as service engineering, where firms start seeking opportunities to innovate, design, and manage service ops, service factors, as well as the emphasis on service productivity. Today, firms focus on service value, which is an outcome of services processes, where they look at perceived service value from the customer's perspective, customer value, and customer equity. The development of services is covered in the subject services management. In segment 2, we talk about thinking of services. In segment 3, we look at services marketing. In segment 4, we look at service ops. In segment 5, we touch on services HR, which forms the backbone for delivery of good service operations. And in segment 6, we look at sustaining service performance, which focuses on service productivity and service innovation. In segment 2, we talk about how services are actually processes, where services are intangible, which cannot be seen, touched, felt. Services are perishable. If you do not consume it today, it's gone tomorrow. We talk about how services are heterogeneous and it can be seen or perceived differently by different customers. And services are produced and consumed simultaneously, and that the customer has to be there to consume the service. And services are co-produced by the customer in terms of customer co-creation, where the customer can actually design the services and participate in the planning and development of the service. And finally, service cannot be transported due to the nature that they are not tangible and they cannot be inventory, unlike products. We also look at how customers evaluate services based on their perceived service value, which is an outcome of their perceived service quality, which is derived from customers' expectations and perceptions of a service. And perceived value is important. How do we actually derive perceived value? Perceived value can be seen as the cost-benefit relationship, where customers perceive the benefit of the service at a given price. We can look at services via the service value chain. And from the service value chain, there are 2 perspectives to services: the relationship perspective or the interaction perspective. Adopting the relationship process, we know that customer acquisition can lead to customer retention And in the event that there is a service failure, customers who are retained in the long run are more prone to customer recovery techniques, and this leads to service value. From an interaction perspective, we focus on the frontline employee and service operations, where we believe that proper customer integration will lead to a positive service encounter by the frontline employee, and in the event where there is a service failure, service recovery would be positive. And this would also lead to service value. An example, let's look at a typical process of a hotel. Adopting a relationship perspective, one would think about relationship marketing activities such as CRM, loyalty programs, customer database mining, etc. Adopting an interaction process, we would be looking at the interaction between marketing and sales and how that leads on to service ops, operations, reservations, and capacity management of demand and supply, or U management, which we call it, leading on to frontline operations and delivery of service. We can also look at services from the perspective of a relationship profit chain. Marketers believe that proper services marketing will lead to service quality from the customer's perspective, and when a customer perceives high quality, there would be service value. With value, they can see some customer satisfaction, and when they are satisfied, there would be retention. They would go back to the same provider. In the long run, they would perceive customer value. What are the effects of customer relationships, you might ask? The value effects include a decreased cost of serving the same customer just because the customer is a long-term customer. Retained customers would have better evaluations of the service. They would increase their share of wallet. They would buy more from the service provider, and there would be more opportunities for cross-selling and upselling. And there would be positive word of mouth, which is important because they would spread positive words and recommendations about the company to their friends or relatives. If we look at a service encounter, in order for a service encounter to take place, we need two persons, the customer and the service provider. From the perspective of the customer, they play different roles. The role of a user, the role of a buyer, the role of an influencer, the role of a person who decides on the service. And from the service provider perspective, they need to know how to manage the service encounter to deliver a proper service that would please the customer and that would derive in service value. In terms of looking at a service encounter, the service encounter consists of numerous critical incidents, which can be positive or negative. And the summation of all these critical incidents would give rise to an overall service encounter. In segment 2, we talk about the classification of services. We talk about the 4 factors of services. We talk about the Mills and Margulis services classification scheme of maintenance, tasks, and personal interactive services. We look at Roger Skinner's service process matrix, where you can classify service based on the degree of labor intensity versus the extent of customer interaction and customization, which give rise to service factory, service shop, mass service, and professional service. We also cover the 7 P's of extended marketing mix. In addition to the 4 P's of product marketing, we look at people, physical evidence, and processes. In addition to what we talk about in segment 2, other ways where you can look at service encounters include looking at the service resource, whether it's a human or automation. For example, if a human service resource is delivering the service to the customer who is directed at a human, it could be an example of meeting with an investment advisor or seeing a doctor for consultation. If it's an automated service directed at an object, it could be like a car wash and a car wash machine. Other ways you can look at services include looking at it from the customer integration perspective, where one would think that a service can be delivered at different places, at the provider's place or the customer's place. If a service is delivered at the provider's place but directed at a human, it could be examples like visiting a hair salon, going into a retailer to shop for clothes, or it could be at a customer's place directed at a human, for example, having a home doctor's visit or having a babysitter come to your place to actually look after the baby. Examples of services directed at objects include a car repair that can be taken place at the provider's place, like an auto workshop, or an object taking place at the customer's place, like having the garbage collection services at your place, at the customer's place, or a repair service. These different ways of looking at services from the location perspective or from the provider perspective are new ways that we can look at service classifications in addition to what we talk about in segment 2. As we move on to segment 3, we will be looking at services marketing, concepts of service quality, customer satisfaction, customer loyalty, service recovery, service guarantees. We will talk more about the different services marketing concepts. Till then, I will see you again in week 4. Otherwise, have fun in the discussion box.